How's it going, everyone? Welcome back. It's been a while since I made the first video, but hey, better later than never, I think. Today we're going to be talking about Vita Carnis. The story goes that in the 30s, a new species of meat animals spawned suddenly in our world. This went from inoffensive and almost prey animals like the crow, the trimmings, or the meat snakes, to prey predators and almost Lovecraftian entities like the harvesters, the mimics, or the monoliths. Today we're going to be solving some of these mysteries around this series, and so, without further ado, let's get right into it. The first video is related to the crow species. We see someone switching channels in an old TV. Among this, we see a wanted sign from the Canadian authorities, the CSIS, for a so-called Vincent Barrar. Keep that in mind, since Canada is also where the monoliths stand. Allegedly. It stops on a cooking recipe for pasta that included some crow in it. I love the fact that the cook in question is wearing bathroom cleaning gloves to touch the food, until he brings the crow to the table. Hey, as a guy, don't you think it would be better to remove the plastic before cutting it? Hey, you gotta give Darian Quilloy credit, he uses props for most of his stuff. Besides the crow's aspect of the food, everything seems normal. After cooking it, the crow even looks like ground meat. But then he adds the last ingredient, and here's where the music distorts for a bit. When a supposed flavor enhancer is applied, and the recipe emphasizes that the food must be at 60 degrees Celsius for it to work. That's pretty odd already. But keep all of that in mind, the wanted person and the flavor enhancer, and that at the end of some of these videos we'll hear someone writing down notes on a paper. The next video is about the trimmings. It is a veterinary guide on how to take care of trimmings at home. It basically says that we must treat these eyeless and rotten meatballs just like a cat. What you need to take into account is that trimmings like to watch TV and listen to the radio, and we see one of them hearing into the static. And if you recall for the documental, it had some newspapers crop outs, talking about some farmers that once found an infestation of these things under a satellite dish. Keep all of that in mind. Oh, also, trimmings are nocturnal creatures and can get a bit noisy at times. The next video is a VHS record talking about the largest meat snake ever found during the 40s. At the end of World War II, a cleaning team found an abnormally big snake stuck in a tunnel, with a very hard coating for skin. The strange part is that they found multiple animal skulls covering the entrance of its mouth, and that at the other side of its tail they found a pile of bodies. Nothing new for Germany at the end of World War II, I guess. We also have this photo in the type interference of a military officer. Please note the symbol of his uniform, a red triangle inside a black circle, and that it also mentions some sort of cult activity. The following video is the Mimic Defense tape, released in 1996, a PSA that warns the public about certain measures to take into consideration in case of running into a mimic. It tells us that they're ambush predators that can sneak into houses by folding themselves inside furniture, closets, and mattresses. Okay, that's legitimately scary. Also that they are intelligent creatures capable of wearing clothes and with some time even imitate human faces. Emphasis on imitate. Well, I guess there is a reason why they call them mimics. Then, at the end of the tape, it changes to what seems a record from a police case from 1983 about two missing siblings, Chris and Janice. This tape must be all the evidence that the police has. We see them in their porch at night. They were heading somewhere in the woods. A few interesting things you hear on the way is that the camera was borrowed, that it was the best that they could give him, and the place they were heading was closed by the authorities after a gory homicide in a trailer. According to him, they were very far away from any building. He asks his sister to take the flashlight and record him, and he starts to read the script. In the year 1980, a teenager returned home to his trailer at night, but found his father, surnamed Barrar, dead in a grisly manner. When the police came to investigate, they acted very strange and didn't reveal much information to the public. When the family gave a statement, they passed it off as a suicide. But the few witnesses said there was too much blood to be just that. That's why they were here, to find out what really happened. The strange thing is that after being so far in the woods, Chris insisted in censoring his face and his voice to be altered anyways. After that, they finished the footage and returned home, but on their way back, they're attacked by a mimic. Chris is considered missing and his sister is taken by the monster. The following looks more like a report. Someone is recording data about the harvesters and how between August and October of 1989 there was a drastic change in their population around an imaginary island on the Hudson Bay. And I say imaginary because in real life that landmass doesn't exist on the Hudson Bay. Also, in between the recording, we get to see a portrait of a family and some flashes of disturbing imagery of one of the little boys and the mother falling into a harvester's trap to be literally swallowed by the earth, leaving the father and the boy as the only survivors. The next video is a compilation of commercials about Nutri-Co's flavor enhancer, now in a new deluxe size, and we can see how the ads become more and more robotized and less discreet with its goal to make you buy the damn thing. In the video description there's an addendum, a research that shows the truth about the enhancer. It contained host spores, the next specimen of the Carnis family after the harvester, and that the Canadian government came into conflict with an organization known as the Containment and Research Consultation Association Society, or CARCAS for short. Notice that in between there's also pictures showing influential people using pins of the red triangle in the black circle, which we get to see on the flavor enhancer packaging too. The last video for now is supposed to be related to the monolith. The footage is from December 1990. It begins describing the monolith, and it says that they have a network of mycelium under them. Mycelium, for those who don't know, are basically the roots of fungi. But more than roots, it works like a neuronal network. This is then interrupted by a message directed to Carcass. A distorted voice speaks. It was aware that the organization was researching the Carnis species, and had received some backlash for it in the past. But they share the same objective. Something was wrong, and they knew it too. Countless deaths and disappearances at a global scale, and the authorities did nothing about it. All of that while they've been clouding people's mind, and it shows what he had collected. The siblings murdered by the mimic, the broken family by the harvester, and the presence of host spores in the flavor enhancer. Continue saying that they had left clues, traces, crumbs, and he had collected them, and everything led him here. A small lumber town in the middle of Oregon, called Gravity Falls, led him here, the island south of the Hudson Bay, where the harvester's population was moving towards, and where, most likely, the monoliths stand. We also get to see new clues, something about an increase of cult activity, the one where those people with the red triangle probably belonged to. Something important was going to happen on that island. He didn't have the power to stop it, but they did, and hopefully it wasn't too late. And all the clues converge in a black circle, the singularity. Now, who is this person investigating all of this? Let's see. Remember that the CSIS was looking for a so-called Vincent Barrar? Now, look at this photo, taken in 1988. And now look at the photo of the family. These two look a bit similar, but that's not enough. The other clue is on the siblings tape. I can't make out exactly the name he says, but the guy's last name was Barrar. And that happened in 1980. The kid who was returning home could be Vincent Barrar, who a couple of years later will match with this photo. Also, the whole sequence of the family attacked by the harvester seems more like a nightmare. It could mean that Vincent Barrar is the kid, having bad dreams about the way his mother and brother died, which left his father devastated and living in a trailer. And, as we've already been told, the police did nothing about it. That will also explain why at the end of some of these tapes we hear someone writing down notes. I think it is Vincent Barrar who made this whole research, and now is trying to get in contact with Carcass. The flavor enhancer commercial was released to the public in the 90s, which contained host spores. And the year before, at the end of 1989, the harvesters were moving around the Canadian provinces south of Hudson Bay. And I want you to keep in mind the spores, since in the monolith tape it refers to them as having mycelium network for roots. Spores, mycelium, mushrooms, it is all connected. And now the authorities are going after Vincent, since the government is behind all of this. The mimic defense tape makes them look less dangerous than the commentary says, which was just an university project. They're trying to hide their supernatural qualities. Also, it says that there has been an increase in cult activity. Probably the organization with the red triangle pin. And all of this connects back to the singularity, which I am beginning to think is the thing the monoliths are surrounding in that island. Now, there is still the elephant in the room, the story of the prince. At the end of each of these videos, there is what seems like a page from a fairy tale book, and if you connect them all, it tells a story. Although, taking into consideration, the first page is a bit choppy. Once upon a time, there was a distant kingdom. The kingdom was, the royal family were magical. They traveled land and sea to discover new places and learn what. During the travels on one of their expeditions, a great storm struck. It was so powerful, it swayed the boat the royal family rowed and pushed the prince out and into the sea. After being stranded at sea, the young prince eventually was cast to an island. Injured, the prince stumbled his way into a nearby cave. The prince used what magic he could to put himself into a healing sleep. But the prince's sleep was long. He slept for what seemed like forever. As he slept, the land around him changed and grew. It wasn't recognizable from when the prince first arrived, but the sleep still needed time to heal the prince. Much more time, but it kept the prince safe while he rested, guarding him from the elements as the land changed. Outside the cave, during a time of hardship, lived the island critters. The critters were struggling in this hard time. There was barely any food to go around. They would go and gather whatever they could. Although one day, the critters found the cave searching for food. They found the prince in his trance in his healing sleep. The critters were so awestruck and enchanted by the prince's magics. Who is this creature? Why are they here? Are they dangerous? A thought was brought up. What if this creature could use its magic to help them? They continued to argue about the prince and his magic. In the end, the majority of the critters agreed that the prince was dangerous and should not be meddled with, although the other creatures ignored the rest of their fellow kind. Instead, they secretly visited the slumbering visitor. They snuck what little food they had and carefully fed it into the prince, greatly hastening the recovery. One day, the prince woke suddenly, thanks to the critters' assistance. The healing process had finished very quickly. The prince had fully recovered, and was now fully awake and aware of their surroundings. Surprised by the sudden awakening, the critters ducked and hid from the prince's sight. One of the critters built up the courage to meet the now awake stranger. They crawled to the prince's side and extended their hand in friendship. The prince reached back, and together, they had formed a bond that will change their fate forever. The critters led the prince out of the cave, up to the top of the hill the prince had been buried under, and showed them the forest. This is our home, full of wonder and beauty. Although the forest struggles to provide for all of us critters, and we are facing disaster. Can you help us? The prince stood back, spread his arms, and before him grew a bright light. Mystical shapes and colors, lights and figures. The critters watched with wide eyes. Such sublime brilliance. The prince completed his display. He vowed, with the power he held and the help of his kingdom, he shall heal their home. The thing the prince created is obviously the Vita Carnis species, and the critters are us humans. So basically, the prince is an alien, and the island at the south of the Hudson Bay is probably where the prince hid all of these years. Now, take a look at the last page. The prince gathered what he could and set sail onward. Once the prince returns home, they will come back to the island and return to the critters. So basically, the humans helped this alien to recover. In return, he created the Vita Carnis species and appointed some humans to be his heralds or proteges or something along those lines. Those are the influential people with the red triangle pin, the code, the government basically. They might explain why the crow and the trimmings are attracted to static. They're waiting for a signal from out of space. Also, I think that the singularity is more like a communication device with the humans and the prince. And whatever is going on in that island with the harvesters and the monolith, it means the return of the prince, and maybe the return of the royal family. And with that said, that might be it for today. I hope you liked the video, and if that's the case, I would really appreciate if you leave a like and hit the bell button and subscribe. I'm trying to be a bit more consistent with this channel and stuff. Anyways, remember to leave a comment, share it with your friends. Thank you all for watching, and I see you all next time.